You good, right? So first things first, I make sure my wheels are chocked, okay? They are already chocked, just making sure. And then if you join me on the inside, I'll get in with a 3 points of contact for safety. 1, 2, 3. And you can come on around. You gotta come in. Put my seatbelt on. So, I'm gonna do my safe start to begin with. And look at my gauges and make sure my ABS light came on and went off. Signaling that it's working. Make sure I'm in neutral. Start up the truck. Okay. So the first thing, I'm gonna wait for my governor to sneeze at between 120 and 140 PSI. How I'm gonna accelerate this is by revving the truck's engine to between 10 and 15 RPMs. There goes the sneeze. And it happened at about 120 RPMs, signaling that it's working. All right, so for my first test, now I'm gonna switch off the truck, turn it back to the safe start position, so I got my gauges. I'm gonna make sure that my brakes are in. Actually, they should have probably been out before. And I'm gonna begin my first test. My first test is my applied brake pressure test. I'm gonna put my foot on the brake for 60 seconds and I should lose no more than 4 PSI. Okay, as I'm waiting for this test to take place, I'm listening for air leaks. And that's 60 seconds and I lost no more than 4 PSI, which means that my that brake test is complete there. For my next test, I'm gonna test for the emergency brake signal and signal light. So I'm gonna start fanning the brakes until they come on at anywhere below 55 PSI. As you can see, we have the emergency alarm and signal and light. For the next test, I'm gonna continue fanning the brakes between 20 to 45 PSI and my emergency brake should pop out. And there you go. Both brakes popped out. That test was successful. At this point, I'm gonna turn the truck off, back to safe start, make sure we're in neutral, start the truck back up, and begin my in-cab inspection. So we're gonna begin with left turn signal, right turn signal, 4-way flashers, low beam, clearance lights, high beam. We're gonna test, we're gonna look for my emergency equipment. My 3 emergency triangles are properly mounted and secured. They're not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. My fire extinguisher is properly mounted and secured, filled to the operating level, and ready for use. My 6 emergency fuses are present and ready for use. My windshield is properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. There's no illegal stickers. My tags are up to date. My windshield wipers are properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. We'll give those a test and we'll check the windshield fluid. They're working, and the rubber seals have no abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry ruts, and they fit comfortably to my windshield. Working properly. My seal for my windshield is rubber, and it has no abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots. Next, we're going to check my defroster for visibility. Make sure that we can have visibility in cold. And that is working correctly. And we're going to check both areas. That's working correctly. Next, as you can hear the governor sneezed, I'm going to check my city horn, my air horn. We're going to check my hood mirror, my passenger side mirror, my driver's side mirror. They are all properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and they are set to my view. So at this point, we had the governor sneeze, so we're going to continue with the air brake test. I'm going to get out and unchuck my wheels. So I'm going to get out with my 3 points safety. Back in with 3 points of safety. Once again, my seatbelt is working properly. No cuts or abrasions, and the latch is working properly. I can stay right there. I'm not going to pull it too hard. So for the first test, we're going to test my parking brake for my tractor. Let it settle. We're just going to let it tug. All right, that worked. Now we're going to test my trailer. Pull out the parking brake. Let them tug. There you go. That's working correctly. Now we're going to push both of the brakes in, and we're going to imaginary pull forward because you guys are here. We're going to pull the truck forward at 5 miles per hour and keep our hands just outside the steering wheel to make sure the truck doesn't pull to the left or the right, indicating a problem with my brakes. Okay, there we go. And that worked correctly. The truck didn't pull to the left or the right. I'm going to set my brakes. Let that settle. Make sure we're in neutral. At this time, I'm going to ask my inspector to get outside and help me with my light check signals. So, if the instructor's out there, it's going to be the instructor. Left turn signal. Right turn signal. High beam. Low beams. Clearance lights. High beams. Four-way flashers. Okay. On the side. Left turn signal. Four-way flashers. To the rear. Left turn signal. Right turn signal. Four-way flashers. Brake lights. Clearance. Okay. Now as the instructor comes around to the front, we'll get ready for the external. That completes our in-cab inspection. We're going to get out with our 3-point of stance contact again. Let's start the engine inspection. We'll get that thing right there. 3 points of contact. Alright. So at this time, first things first, I'm going to check my clearance lights. They are properly not secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are pressed and tight. They're amber in color and they're used for clearance. Then I'm going to check my trucks. The ground underneath my truck for any leakage, oil, water, radiator fluid. I'm going to have a look to see if my truck is leaning to the left, to the right, front, or the back to indicate something wrong with my suspension or a low tire. Next, I have my headlights. They are properly mounted, secured, not been broken or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. My headlights are used for high beams and low beams. They are clear. Next, I have my turn signals and four-way flashers. They are amber in color. They are properly mounted, secured, not been broken or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. They are there ready for turn signals or four-way flashers. Next, I'm going to use a three-point of contact. You lock it. You did that? Lock it. This thing is big as a block. Contact for safety. Okay. So at first I have my radiator fluid coolant, power steering coolant, my oil seal, and my brake reservoir. All are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and there's no leakage. They're at the proper operating level, and they're all hand tight caps. How I would check my oil is I pull out the dipstick, wipe it off clean, reinsert it, bring it back out, make sure it was at the proper operating level above the fill line. My brake lines are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rods, and I hear and see no leaks. All of my hoses are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No leaks. They are sealed with clamps. Next, my compressor is gear driven. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No legal welds. Gear driven. No leaks. Next, I have my steering shaft. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. I have my U-joints. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly lubricated. Next, I have my gearbox. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. There's no leakage, no illegal welds. Next, I have my pitman arm, drag link, upper and lower control arm, and my tie rod. It is, they all are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, no illegal welds, and they are secured with castle nuts and cotter pins. Next, I have my shock absorber. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds, no leakage. Secured with the mounts, upper and lower. If this truck was equipped with airbags, I would check that it was also properly mounted, secured, not been broken and cracked. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rods. Next, I have my leaf spring hangers, my leaf springs, and my U-bolts. They are all properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. They are properly spaced. They're not shifted. Next, I got my brake lines. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rods. My ABS line is with that. It is also properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rods. That leads down to my brake pads and my brake drum. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. I have at least a 1/4 inch of material on my brake pad and my brake drum. is clear of debris, oil, or grease. No illegal welds. Next, I have my rims, my outer rim and my inner rim. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. Properly seated to my tire, which is also properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots. My outer wall of the tire, my inner wall of the tire, and the top of my tire. The top of my tire is evenly worn. It is a virgin tire, no less than 432 depth, which I will check with a depth gauge. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots. I would also check the PSI of this tire being no less than 100 with my valve stem, which is properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. And this is where you would check your tire's PSI. Up next, I have my lug nuts. They are properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No rust, no shavings indicating a loose lug nut. No illegal welds. Next, I have my hub seal. It is properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. There's no leakage. It's filled to the operating level. No illegal welds. Another once over from my hoses. Nothing I've missed. I have my clearance light. Sorry. My turn signal and my four-way flasher light. It is amber in color. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. It is used for turn signaling and four-way flashers. I have my my driver's side mirror. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. It's clean and clear and is set to my view. It's not bent, broken, or cracked. Up next, I got my fuel tank. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. I have my oil tank straps. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots. My fuel tank is secured with a hand cap, hand tight, which has a chain inside, a metal chain, and a rubber seal. The rubber seal has no abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots, and it's hand tight. There's no leakage. If I had a depth tank here, I would inspect it the same as I did my fuel tank. Up next, I got my emergency brake lines, and I got my service brake lines. My emergency are red in color, my service are blue. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots. They go up to my glad hands, which are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. Inside my glad hands are rubber seals, and they are properly mounted, secured. They're not bent, broken, or cracked. No abrasions, bubble cuts, or dry rots, and they're not rubbing against the frame. I have my 7-pin electrical line, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. It's in the lock position. There's no exposed wiring. It is also not rubbing across the frame. The frame is properly mounted, secured. It's not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and there's no illegal welds. Up next, we got our apron, our fifth wheel skid plate, and our kingpin. They are all properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. There's no spacing between the apron and the fifth wheel, and it's properly lubricated. Up next, I got my pivot pin. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. Up next, I got my locking handle and my locking jaw. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and they're in the locked position. Next, I have my stationary platform. It is properly mounted and secured. It's not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. Double check it's in the lock position. All is good. Right, I got my cross members and my floorboards. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds and no holes or dry rots in my floorboards. No illegal welds. Up next, I got my landing gear. I got my landing gear leg, my landing gear foot, and my landing gear handle. They are all properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. No illegal welds. They are in the up position, driving. Handles in the lock position. There's enough clearance room between my landing gear and my tire to make a smooth turn. Up next, I got my DOT tape. Covers at least 50% of my trailer. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. Sometimes it has nuts and bolts, and they're present and tight. Sometimes you have landing gear. Not clearance, right? Up next, I got my clearance lights up the back. They are red in color. They are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and they're properly working order. Up next, I got my tail lights. They are used for four-way flashers, for turn signals, and for braking. They are all properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and they're in good working order, red in color. Up next, I got my clear license plate light. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, and it is used to indicate and illuminate my license plate, clear in color. Up next, I got my DOT bumper. It is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, or cracked. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, no illegal welds. Up next, I got my DOT tape. It is properly mounted, secured. It covers 100% of my bumper, and it's not bent, broken, or cracked. And I would inspect this side of my truck the same way I inspected this side of my truck. That completes it.